I was asked to have a field service presentation, and initially I thought, yeah, great, I love talking about field service. It's by far my favorite module because it's the one thing where things actually happen. We send technicians out into the world, they touch real machines, they actually get work done. And I think the contrast to something like project operations that happens purely online is what excites me, at least. So I'm going to try to convey that. And in preparation for this talk, I figured the coolest aspect of field service, in my opinion, is that if it's set up correctly, in theory, the people here working with field service know that's not really reality, but in theory, you don't need to touch it. It's going to be hands-on, hands-off. That's where my title comes from. While it's hands-on field service, you don't actually need to touch it, in theory. Small disclaimer. So then I figured, okay, I'll prepare a presentation about what you don't have to do, and that was a bit of a challenge. I mean, how are you going to present something that the system does in the background that is very hard to visualize because it's all just configuration, technically. Of course, you can extend it, and that's my job. That's what we do all day long, extending field service to integrate more processes in the background, help you schedule. But what it does is, for an AI summit and a project operations summit, it doesn't necessarily use AI. I will, of course, highlight and have a focus on the AI aspect and how you can integrate it and how Microsoft intends you to use it. But I think it's also fair to say we do a lot of calculation. You've probably all heard of the traveling salesman problem, where how do you most quickly service different aspects or different customers most efficiently? That's something that field service, of course, with RSO will actually calculate for you. It's not going to guess, and I'm going to use the term guess here just to differentiate between AI that will make a suggestion, but it's going to be actual data. So I think that's an interesting aspect where Microsoft, of course, is introducing Copilot, and I'll get into that in a moment. So my presentation, the slides will end here for a moment, and we will now switch to a more practical aspect, and I'll get back to these in a moment. Yes, perfect. If you haven't seen this, I prefer to start here because it's the most visual field service gets. It's a schedule board. We've seen it maybe from other modules such as project operations, but of course it's much more granular, and we actually talk about people's location and the location of where people need to go. So you get travel times.
Can you try to put the microphone like this? We hear you better then. I'm so sorry.
Of course.
That's better.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the feedback. So I prefer to start here because it's the most obvious and most visual aspect of field service. You can actually see where people are and where they need to be. Before I switch to the background, and unfortunately, I hope it's not going to be too boring and too technical here, stay in the background for quite a while for the rest of this demo, actually. So as you can imagine, AI can help you identify issues. So we could probably all imagine, I won't show this, there's nothing really to show. We can all imagine how AI might analyze that a machine is running hot. You could probably do that without AI, but you will trigger a work order in some sort. The out-of-the-box functionality in this case is actually that a work order might be triggered through IoT alerts. So that's a we've all heard it for the last 10 years, very normal thing to have a machine order its own service, practically speaking. And one of those alerts would then trigger an IoT alert, which would stay active until the work order is actually resolved. You can imagine that like a alarm clock beeping. And until you've actually traveled to the alarm clock and snoozed it or deactivated it, it will stay on. So you can imagine that's how field service essentially works. Things trigger work orders. It could, of course, also just be scheduled. So you might have an agreement. But all of these different sources, and I won't stay there, it's before lunch. It's quite obvious, in my opinion. You have the final result of having an incident that happens at a place. And I think I would like to start the actual system demo here. The incident type is the first, in my opinion, cool thing field service does for you, where AI can also help route. So the incident type defines what happens when you have an alert. So the high temperature in a machine might indicate that something is incorrect or needs to be solved. And the incident type in this situation would automatically add products, services, tasks, checklists, whatever it might be, whatever might have been predefined to be added automatically. And you could conceivably, but honestly this is a bit of speculation as to how relevant this might be to you, you could conceivably have AI suggest things that could be done. But that's a bit very theoretical here. But I would like to start here because effectively AI or a IoT alert will trigger your case. It will populate your case. And what it will also do, not just these tasks, but it will also add requirements. So it might be that you are licensed to service a certain machine, but you are also licensed to enter the airport security area because you have a background check that is done. And the same machine that is installed in a municipality might not meet that same check. So you could have requirements that are added together, aggregated from all different situations. The same machine might be installed at great heights, so you need a certification and a security license to do that. So essentially you accumulate all of these requirements in your resource requirement. And then the next step is you can even have requirements groups. We'll see if this loads. That's always the nice part about a live demo. Let's just refresh it. You could even say automatically, we're not just going to send one technician, but we might send 5 technicians with 2 vehicles and a special machine, and they might need a workshop, and they might just need a lot of things. What I did here is use a bit of a lazy example. We're just going to send 6 people. We're not really caring about a lot of details. We make sure that I'm available, but otherwise we need 2 electricians and 1 person that has this certification. So you get the idea. It's not meant as a real life example, just that we have reached the stage where we now need, in this case, 6 different resources. They might be machines or people. They might not even come on the same day. They might be staggered. They might have dependencies on each other. And we can make sure from a system perspective that this happens. And we've now got my whole introduction ready. That's where AI and RSO comes in a moment. So we've reached the stage where we now want to schedule 6 different things in relation to each other to appear at the customer site, along with travel, along with all the logistics that goes around it. So yeah, and now I'm hoping that I've built the story enough to have your imagination on my side, because all of this is not going to be a live demo. Yes, I can show the system, but inherently RSO and to some extent Copilot is not live demo friendly, because I will show that in a minute. It happens in the background and it happens instantly. So I've turned it off, otherwise it would destroy my examples. So bear with me for a bit there. That what you can do with RSO, and I'll backtrack a bit, RSO is short for Resource Scheduling Optimization. And it's a product that you can buy on top of field service that will, I'll use the term hack into your system just using API calls as an external user and optimize your schedule for you according to the resource rules and goals that you've defined. So it's usually the easiest to simply give that system user a lot of rights and have the system user that performs these tasks do their thing. And what I want to show you here is RSO in its core. So you specialize and optimize your schedule by your criteria, and you can do this to a level that I will stop myself in a moment, because I'm pretty sure if you're interested in this, it's not going to be enough, and if you're not interested, it's going to be too much. So I'll try to keep this short by saying that we have a scope and a goal. Scope being, what do you want to optimize? What resources what requirements? Requirements are what I just talked about. We have, in my example, 6 different people, 6 different resources that want to be at the customer site at a certain point in time. And then even on the right side here, we have our statuses, which means for my demo here, I've turned all of this off, otherwise it would not be presentable. We could decide to rebook people and appointments, work orders on the fly instantly. Of course, that's very inconvenient in real life because you wouldn't tell a customer, look, I'm not appearing in 5 minutes, I'm actually appearing tomorrow. That would be quite inconvenient, not very realistic, so you wouldn't necessarily activate this, but you can very much down to that level decide what status still allows rebooking. For example, if a technician is already traveling, you probably don't want to rebook them to somewhere else. That would be a bit impractical. So I'll try not to go into too much detail. As I said, I'm trying to spare you there, but we have the scope, we have the goal. The goal is again a long list of requirements. What is your target optimization? And we have, and I'll try to stay on this level, a range of very light, which means put anything on the calendar. We're happy if the resource is scheduled. We don't want our machine to be free the afternoon, put it onto some work order that makes sense, of course. So it's going to respect your rules somewhat. And we have very intense, and that's what I alluded to earlier. We have our traveling salesman problem that can be calculated entirely, which also means it takes forever, potentially. If you have 100 resources, this could take hours because you also have your constraints. So I'm just trying to give you an overview of what you can do here in terms of locking down your goal and optimizing it exactly how you need it, but with the caveat that while you might select that it matches territories, or you might not care about territories, or whatever the criteria might be that you can add or remove, it's in the background. It is a rule catalog that the system will follow to the string, but it will not be visible. Things will just magically move around on your schedule board. And that's really bad for a demo, which is why I've turned it off. So as you can see, it's currently inactive and will not actually run. But this is also an example, and that's the next level I want to just highlight or announce, that this example here optimizes midnight every day for the next day once. And you can have many of these. So conceivably, it might calculate throughout the night for the day after tomorrow perfectly saying it's the best it can do. It really calculates all the options. And then it might run, so I'll just go into an example here. We might have live optimization, I've just called it, to visualize what's happening. It might run every 30 minutes. And then with lighter rules, meaning if something changes, if someone's finished earlier, it can simply add another task to them, and a technician is never going to be not scheduled while they have the time and resources. And I haven't said this yet, but yes, warehouse management is a core component of field service. So if needed, we can actually define, does the technician have the correct spare part in their van? Could they collect it quickly? So things like that. I'm hoping to just convey the idea that field service will take care of it. So far, we've been able to, I think, meet all of the requirements that someone threw at us. So it will take care something happens, and it will especially take care that the right qualification in all aspects is what is present. And I'm done with this portion. Thank you for bearing with me. But in order to present the next portion, the next two actually, it was a bit important to show what you cannot show. So this happens in the background. As I said, the best thing that happens with resource optimization is you see things disappearing on the schedule board and appearing somewhere else, or just disappearing. If your rules mean it cannot be done within the working time, it disappears from your calendar, if that's what you want. It can also mean that things are not scheduled if you do not perfectly meet your requirements. So it's very tough on the rules. It will enforce your rules, And you need to make sure to relax those rules, otherwise nothing will happen. Field service or resource scheduling optimization is a bit of a tough chew in some cases, especially if your data isn't perfect. So that's a bit of a caveat there. And that takes me to the alternative side of the force, where we have Copilot. Copilot can be purchased independently, as you know. To RSO, they are both independent licenses. You could have one or the other, or it's actually a pretty good case of having both. So what RSO does really poorly, sorry for anyone from Microsoft here, is visualize what's happening. Things just disappear, appear, while Copilot is pretty good, or at least an order of magnitude better, at showing the user what's actually happening. So let's go for a live demo here. And I'm still old school. I write please in front of my prompts. And I will see one-handed typing. So let's just say for Manuel. He's one of my testers, always very eager to work. And the difference to RSO in this case is it will not visualize, then we're all imagining an image of some sort. That's not the correct term, but we get a feedback. And that's a major difference because RSO will track in the background. I've tried optimizing this and this and this, but unless you know where to search, finding that log of decisions is impossible to find. And it doesn't really help you if it tells you, I've booked it there, or I haven't booked it, it's not bookable. That doesn't really count as information in my sense because it doesn't help me. It's already finished. It hasn't suggested anything. Yes, I can use suggestions, but practically speaking, RSO will just simply do things. And in the contrast here, we have Copilot talking to me. So it's much more accessible. I can talk to it. And it will simply propose, in this case, let's see what has it done. It's always live, it might be different to what I've tested. It gives me an overview in this case of what is currently booked. And seems to have optimized. Let's just check whether that is optimized in some sort. So it listed all of the currently available bookings. And if we go to the next day, they are empty. So either they are all booked or it just gave me an overview. I would have to check the exact output. But the overall advantage that I was hoping to convey is that the user actually interacts with it. I would very strongly recommend not to let every single dispatcher edit RSO. You've seen the rules. Once they are perfectly optimized, you better not touch them. And if they aren't perfect, your average user isn't going to be the solution to your issue. Sorry, but that's usually a power user functionality as sysadmin that will touch RSO, and you better not touch it afterwards. So in my opinion, having Copilot next to RSO makes sense. Having only Copilot would probably also be fine, because usually the dispatchers don't have too many clients and they will do it manually. That's effectively the real world truth in that position. And what I wanted to show you, or I'm very excited to show this portion, is Plan C. So something a colleague of mine built for a customer of ours that I'm only going to show in a PowerPoint slide, but I'm hoping to inspire with this because I'm quite excited about this existing and the colleague just building this. I'm quite impressed, honestly. That didn't work. Okay. So, what we see here is, in my opinion, the next step, the logical thing out of the two. We provide a clear rule set from RSO. We provide visualization that hasn't been there yet. But most importantly, we give the dispatcher, the user, whoever might actually use the system, the tools and the visual overview to make decisions themselves. So that's effectively what Copilot does. It helps you make decisions, gives you data, it summarizes for you, and this is the visual conclusion to that story, in my opinion at least. What we see is a technician that starts in position 1, so please, this is a version 1, use some imagination here. So the 1 and 4 are currently overlapped. And then we have position 2 at the very top right and position 3. So this means the technician day goes from home 1 to 2 to 3 and back to home, which is 4. Now the use case that we're getting to is they are finished early, or the appointment number 3, the door didn't open, whatever it might be, the plan changed. So what this tool now allows you to do is check, well, what could they do on their way home? Is there something we can spontaneously give them? Yes, RSO could do this. Yes, Copilot might tell you, hey, something is open in the vicinity. But what they don't do well or at all is visualize it. So what we have here are the red dots that are accumulations of black dots. So it's simply saying there's too many black dots there to visualize. And then if we zoom in a bit, you could basically just say, okay, from position 3, that would be 1 in this case, to 2, it's just 4 kilometers, 2 hours of work. Why not this? It's a suggestion based, but especially the visual aspect I think is charming and missing in the other 2 options, where a recommendation is not just made in text, see Copilot, or done in the background, see RSO. So you might choose the 1, you might choose a different one. So we've just in the slide before had the middle of Pulheim, now we have the one in the bottom there. And finally, it could even use in reverse. If you have an emergency, you can check who is closest. So that's again something that, of course, you can use prioritization. RSO could be moved to prioritize emergencies. It could even remove stuff that is already booked and planned and somebody might be on the way, and you could then reroute them to the emergency instantly. All of that can of course be done, but you would never know it happens because your appointment is simply deleted and replaced by something else. So this intransparency could conceivably, in my opinion at least, very much be enhanced as in the user experience with something like this, where you simply see, the emergency is there, guide me to it, or who is closest. So that's the end of that example, by which we have now reached the stage where the schedule board is filled. And just to round out field service, up to this point, if you imagine, so that's why my talk is called hands on and hands off. Up to this point, nobody's even done anything. Neither in the system, if you're using RSO, it just scheduled something. It made sure that 5 people are scheduled at the same time using the correct tools, warehousing skills, everything is handled. And the technician in the field would now actually do the work. They would complete tasks, they would perform whatever it is. And that's already the end of field service again, because you would classically send it to SAP or otherwise do the billing. And even time entries, so if we look at the work order, just as a demo, of course, this is not something I filled this out last week. While you change your status, it will tag the times in the background for you. So you don't, as a service technician, you should make sure to actually say, I'm traveling, I've arrived, I'm taking a break, and so on. But if we go to my completed booking, and yes, this is not very genuine, it's from last week, but if we open the booking, we can see it tracked my times in the background. It did all of that for me. So we can make sure the technician is booked automatically, fully automatically, from the IoT alert, whatever it might be, all the way to the completion and the travel home. And they haven't actually touched the system other than change their own status and mark things as completed. And the person in the back office is elevated to the role of supervisor. They only need to watch RSO do their thing. They might ask Copilot to make a suggestion. They might use the map tool, but otherwise it's very, very hands-off. And that's pretty much the message I wanted to convey, that it might be the most interactive because people actually go somewhere, but it's also the most non-interactive if it's set up correctly in theory. But I know a couple people in the audience know that that's, of course, more theory than practice, but that's at least where it could go. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, then now would be a perfect time, or just meet me later.